Myself, Dr. G. Suhasini, Assistant Professor, Head Department of Zoology, Pingle Government College for Women, Waddepally, Warangal, Telangana. Every one of us know that the birds come out of their nests in the dawn and return at dusk. We might have observed that movement of birds in a group or in a line in the sky. This movement is a result of varied group of stimuli, either external in the environment or internal in the body. This proves that majority of birds have the inherent quality to move from one place to another to have favorable or comfortable life. Such birds are called migratory birds and the movement is called migration. On the contrary, some birds remain throughout in one constant place and are called resident birds. In fact, these migratory birds appear at a place in a particular time and later they disappear and again reappear at the same place and time. They maintain such regularity. Now coming to the indicators, coming to our topic, introduction, definition of migration of birds, types of bird migration, causes of migration, guiding mechanism in bird navigation, disadvantages of bird migration. The word migration has come from the Latin word migrara, which means going from one place to another. According to Chung, define migration as a periodic passing of animals from one place to another. Migration can also be a regular periodic to and fro movements of birds either from feeding or breeding. So the migratory birds have two homes. According to L. Thompson, bird migration may be described as changes of habitat periodically recurring and altering in direction, which tends to secure optimum environmental conditions at all times. Bird migration is more or less regular, extensive movements between their breeding regions and their wintering regions. Migration is the yearly seasonal journey undertaken by many species of birds. During this journey, birds cover distance of many kilometers. The most common type of migration are those carried out by birds in the spring and autumn. In spring and autumn. In autumn, they travel from breeding grounds in the north to wintering grounds in the south and vice versa in the spring. Here we can see the seasonal migration of birds at different seasons of the year for food or breeding called seasonal migrations. Example, cuckoos, swifts, swallows, etc. They migrate from south to north during summer. These birds are called summer visitors. Again, there are some birds like snow bunting, redwing, shore lark, grey plover, etc., which migrate from north to south during winter. They are called winter visitors. Now we can see here in the diagram breeding grounds. They migrate in the autumn and enter into the winter grounds. And from spring migration to autumn migration. Why do birds migrate? This is due to behavior is inherited. However, birds will not migrate in the absence of certain physiological environmental cues. In the later summer, the decrease in sunlight stimulates a migrating bird's pituitary gland to produce the hormone prolactin and its adrenal gland to produce the hormone corticosterone. These hormones in turn cause the bird to accumulate large amount of fat just under the skin, providing them with enough energy for the long migratory flight. What triggers migration? The mechanism initiating migratory behavior vary and are not always completely understood. Migration can be triggered by a combination of changes in day length, lower temperature, changes in food supply, and genetic predisposition. What are the causes of migration? Might be instinct gonadal changes, scarcity of food and day length, photoperiodism, seasonal variations, and light. Now coming to on the basis of migration, the birds are classified into two types. Migratory birds, sedentary birds. The birds that migrate are known as migratory birds. The sedentary birds, the birds that remain in one area, are called sedentary. Types of migration. The term migration describes periodic, large-scale movement of population of animals. One way to look at migration is to consider the distance travelled. There are four types: permanent residents, which do not migrate. They are able to find adequate supply of food around the year. Short distant migrants move only to a shorter distance, that is from the higher levels to the lower elevations of the mountain. Medium distance migrants cover distance that span from one to several states. Long distance migrants typically move from breeding ranges in the United States and Canada to wintering grounds in Central and South America. Despite the arduous journey involved, long distance migration is a feature of some 350 species of North American birds. Based on their movement, bird migration shows a variety of variations in their movements. The birds which live in northern part of hemisphere have greatest migratory power. They are as follows: latitudinal migration, longitudinal migration, altitudinal or vertical migration, partial migration, total migration, irregular migration, seasonal migration, diurnal and nocturnal migration. Coming to the latitudinal migration, migration from north to south and vice versa. Most birds live in the land masses of northern temperature and subarctic zones, where they get facilities for nesting and feeding. During summer, they move towards south during winter. An opposite but lesser movement also occurs in the southern hemisphere, when the seasons are changed. For example, cuckoos breed in India and spend the summer at Southeast Africa and thus cover a distance of about 7,250 kilometers. And some tropical birds migrate during rainy season to outer tropics to breed and return to the central tropics in dry season. Many marine birds also make considerable migration. Great shearwater breeds on small islands and migrates as far as Greenland in May and returns after few months. It covers a distance of 1300 kilometers. Penguins migrate by swimming and cover a considerable distance of few hundred miles. It was observed that Sterna covers a distance of 22,500 kilometers during migration. Next, longitudinal migration. It is opposite to latitudinal migration. Starling bird, a resident of East Europe and West Asia, migrates towards the Atlantic coast. California gulls, a resident and breed in Wuhan, migrates westwards to winter in Pacific coast. Next, altitudinal or vertical migration from high mountains to the lowlands during the winter season. Many birds inhabit the mountain peaks, migrates to lowlands during winter. Golden plover example starts from Arctic tundra and goes up to the plains of Argentina, covering a distance of 1100 and 250 kilometers. Birds migrate either in flocks or in pairs. Swallows and storks migrate a distance of 9,650 kilometers from northern Europe to South Africa. Ruff breeds at Siberia and travels to Great Britain, Africa, India, and Ceylon, thus traveling a distance of 9,650 kilometers. Next, partial migration. Do not leave the native place visible throughout the year. Only several members of group take part in migration. Blue jays of Canada and northern part of United States travel southwards to blend with the sedentary population of southern states of USA. Coots and spoonbills of our country may be examples of partial migration. Total migration. When all the members of the species take part in the migration is called total migration. Vagrant or irregular migration. When some of the birds disperse to a short or long distance for safety and food, it is called vagrant or irregular migration. Example, herons may be the vagrant migrants. Blackstroke, goosey ips, spotted eagle, and bee-eater are examples. Daily migration. Some birds daily migrate from their nests by influence of environmental factors such as temperature, light, and humidity. Also, example, crows, herons, and starlings. Next, seasonal migration. Some birds migrate at different seasons of the year for food or breeding. cuckoos, swifts, swallows, etc. They migrate from south to north during the summer. These birds are called summer visitors. And example, snow bunting, redwings, shore lark, grey plovers, which migrate from north to south during winter. They are called winter visitors. Depending upon the time, they are again divided into two types: diurnal and nocturnal. Many large birds like crows, robins, swallows, hawks, jays, bluebirds, pelicans, crays, geese, etc. migrate during daytime for food. These birds are called diurnal birds. Generally, migrate in flocks. Nocturnal birds. Some small birds of passerine groups like sparrows, warblers migrate in darkness called nocturnal birds. The darkness of the night gives them protection from their enemies. Now, range of migration is of two types: altitude of flight, speed of flight. Depending upon the altitude, it ranges from 3,000 feet to 20,000 feet. And depending upon the flight, it may go with a speed of 30 miles per hour to 170 to 200 miles per hour. And it requires 5 to 6 days to reach its destination. Next, route of migration. Definite route of migration is there for birds while going and then returning to their destination places. Regularity in migration. It maintains strict regularity in migration. And order of migration. It exhibits a definite order of regularity. Adults or the old start first and then followed by the young ones during the return, or vice versa. Guiding mechanism. Guiding mechanism in birds help in navigation. And the reason may be fat deposition, inherited instincts, experienced lead the folk. There are many theories for migration, as some of them are Earth's magnetic field. Depending upon the Earth's magnetic field, the movement of the birds is shown, and depending upon the sunlight, the guiding agent in the diurnal migration, and depending upon the stars, the guiding agent is nocturnal migration. The compass and the internal clock in the bird migration, and some of the guidelines. For more than a century, the celestial navigation of birds have fascinated the ornithologists. Different explanations have been advanced to explain how birds navigate. It is difficult to generalize on the means of orientation and navigation in migration. Different groups of birds with different modes of existence have evolved different means of findings their ways from one place to another place in search of food or breeding. During migration, these birds faces many problems such as young ones are not able to reach the destination and die due to the tiresome journey. Sudden change in the climate, sometimes man-made towers, lighthouses may affect them, and some shoot the birds for luxuries. Here you can see the Arctic tern has the longest migration of any bird in the world. You can see the Arctic bird. This black-capped red-billed bird can fly more than 49,700 miles in a year, making a round trip between their breeding grounds in the Arctic and Antarctic, where they spend their winters. The lucky bird gets to see 2 summers a year, and over its lifespan of more than 30 years, the flight can add, add up equivalent of 3 trips to the moon and back. Speaking to the long distance, the northern Witter travel up to 9,000 miles each way between the Arctic and Africa, giving it one of the largest range of any bird. What makes this amazing feat is the tiny bird weigh less than an ounce on an average. Some of the facts during migration, at least 4,000 species of birds are regular migrants, which is about 40% of the total number of birds in the world. Birds reach a greatest height as they migrate. Example, bar-headed geese are the highest flying migratory birds, reaching an altitude up to 5.5 miles above sea level while flying over the Himalayas in India. But the bird with the record of the highest altitude ever in the Raffles griffon vulture, which coiled with a plane at 37,000 feet in 1972. And before going to question round, some of the causes of migration. Most species of birds migrate more or less on schedule and follow the routes in a regular fashion. The actual causative factors determining the course and direction of migration are not clearly known. There are some of the characters, instinct and gonadal changes. It is widely accepted that the impulse to migrate in birds is possibly instinctive, and the migration towards the breeding grounds is associated with gonadal changes. Scarcity of food and day length. Shortening of daylight and increase of cold are believed to stimulate migration. Migration in birds depends upon two important factors, stimulus and guidance. Scarcity of food and fall of daylight are believed to produce endocrinal changes which initiate bird migration. And the very important, the increase of day length, photoperiodism, induce bird migration. The day length affects pituitary and pineal gland and also cause growth of gonads, which secrete sex hormones that are the stimulus for migration. In India, example Siberian crane, geese, swan, those come from Central Asia, Himalayas being to return from March and onwards with the increase of day length. Seasonal variation. This also plays an important role. The north to south migration of birds takes place under stimulus from internal conditions of the gonads, which are affected by seasonal variation. Light plays an important role in the development of the gonads, which has the indirect role on migration. If the gonads undergo regression, the urge of migration is not felt. So the seasonal changes in illumination appears to be a crucial factor for determining the migration. The instinct behaviors like migration, breeding, molting are phasic occurrence in the annual cycle which are possibly controlled by the endocrine system. In all migratory birds, accumulation of fat takes place for extra fuel during prolonged flight in migration. Now coming to the question round. How many types of migrations are there in birds? What are the reasons for migration? Give some examples of nocturnal birds. How many species of birds migrate? Which is the lucky bird to get to see 2 summers? Thank you.